Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to be processing all of the massive revelations from Agatha All Along, Episode 6. So much to discuss. I do want to say, though, up front that there was a mid-season trailer. In fact, I broke it down in a different video. I'm going to avoid talking about that in this particular video because I do get some people that leave comments sometimes and say, hey, don't talk about the trailers in your videos. Do separate ones for that because, we don't want to know. We don't watch the trailers. So my follow-up video to this one will be talking about where we go from here based on the info in the trailers, but I won't be talking about that trailer in this video. So let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have an October contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. All right, so I want to start by discussing Jac Schaeffer's interview with The Wrap. She's the showrunner, and there's no spoilers in here, don't worry. But what she's done is basically said, hey, there's so many mysteries in this show, I don't want you to dwell on the ones that she feels have already been solved. So I really appreciate that. She answers some really, really important questions. For example, she was asked, is Alice dead, like dead, gone? And she was like, yes, Alice is dead. Oh, okay. I mean, we kind of sensed that, but she answered it for us. However, she said it's not the end of the conversation. So, okay, that leaves it open for those like myself that want to see Alice come back. We may see her again in some way, shape, or form. All right. She was also asked about that 80s slasher vibe for the trial, and basically, whose trial was it? And she said, I wanted to do Agatha's trial earlier than people expected. Well, yeah, I can tell you from the comments on the videos, it was definitely earlier than people expected, myself included, but I loved it. She was mixing it up. But then she was asked, but was it really Agatha's trial? And she said, yes, this is the spirit witch's trial, and that is who Agatha is. So, okay, the last trial was definitely Agatha's, and Agatha is a spirit witch. Then she was asked, did they pass the trial? I really wondered about that. And she said simply, yes, they did pass the trial. In fact, she explained the stated goal was to punish Agatha. And boy, did they ever punish Agatha. Okay, very cool. She was also asked a simple question of, what's the deal with Nicholas Scratch? Is he dead and gone? Again, she answered simply, yes, it's a cascade of truly painful moments for Agatha. And then this is really interesting. So this dialogue from last episode was a little confusing when Billy says, that's what it means to be a witch? Killing people to serve your own agenda? No, not for me. And Agatha says, are you sure? Well, she was asked about that. She was asked, that really sounded like an implication that Teen has killed somebody. Did Teen kill someone? And she says, no, that is not what it means. That's Agatha poking holes in anybody who claims to be righteous. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So all very, very helpful information. Also, Jac teased, there's a lot of things I won't answer. So she was asked every one of these questions and refused to answer them. It said, we will get the answers, such as where was Rio at the end of the episode? What was the last look between Rio and Agatha before Agatha left the trial? How long, and in fact, how does Agatha know that Teen is Billy? How much darkness is there in Billy? Why was Agatha's trial 80 themed? And how far does Rio and Agatha's history go back? So I really want to thank Leon Shaw on the Discord for parsing through the article and pointing out that, hey, there are a lot of mysteries we don't know the answer to yet, but Jac promises those answers will come. All right, so one other thing I want to bring up is I suggested that maybe the colors of the road match the magical colors of each of the coven because, Teen's is blue, Agatha's is purple, etc. Sometimes it seems to do it, but the real key is it matches the type of witch they are. So water is blue, fire was red, spirit is purple. That's why I think air, the next one, Lilia's, is going to be the yellow one that we're seeing. And then finally, the last challenge will be earth, which is green. So, okay, a lot of you already figured that out, but I was confused because I was looking at those kind of like playing cards for direction. No, it is these 5 elements of witchcraft. That's what tells us the colors of the road. Okay, so now on to the episode. Once again, the title is part of the Ballad of the Witch's Road, Familiar by Thy Side, which of course is a key part of the ballad right here, Familiar by Thy Side. And in fact, Teen, Billy, has been called a familiar a couple times now. Familiars don't get to vote, Jen said. And all the way back in episode 2, Agatha said, I'm Agatha Harkness, and this is my familiar Toto. So I'm not sure why he serves as a familiar. Maybe if somebody has an idea, you can leave that in the comments. But the bottom line is that is why that criteria is met, because he is the familiar. All right, so then we start with a flashback, going all the way back to William Kaplan's when he was 13 years old and his magic mitzvah. So that's really interesting. A practicing Jew putting magic in their bar mitzvah is fascinating. But hey, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I didn't expect that. So, okay, very cool. So here we see him walking down, very proud, very excited. This is a big day for anyone of Jewish faith. This is a huge day. We see that his mom and his dad, how happy they are for him. Of course, they won't be happy for long. Man, their world crashes down very quickly. We see imagery of the Jewish tree of life here. We also see it during the party on the tables, and it's a really important symbol in Judaism, the tree of life. Although I admit, I immediately thought of Loki's tree, but I am certain this is not what they were going with it. This is a very important symbology in Judaism. And speaking of Judaism, this is wild. Okay, so he reads in Hebrew this passage. Well, huge thanks to Zuko is King on Reddit for figuring out what he was reading. He was reading Leviticus chapter 10, verses 1 and 2, which he doesn't read all of it, but what the two verses say are that Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, I guess, I'm sorry I butchered that, took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense. And they offered unauthorized, that's key, fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. So here's kind of an image of what basically happened. Well, you can kind of see how this is a parallel for WandaVision, right? Billy and Tommy were created, you could argue, from an unholy means, chaos magic by Wanda, and ultimately the hex, fire, extinguished their lives. Remembering that it is a magic mitzvah, of course, they would have palm reading, right? And who's doing the palm reading but Lilia? I thought that was so cool. It turns out that Lilia, and in fact, all of the coven, have met teen Billy previously. So she says, are we looking behind us or ahead? And he answers, ahead. So she does her palm reading and says it's clear that a long journey lies ahead of you. And that journey will be one of great transformation and, boy, never a good sign when the electricity starts crackling. You know the bad news is coming, right? And then she says, your lifeline is broken in two. Of course, it's broken in two because Billy Kaplan, Billy Maximoff. But then she tries to turn it positive and says that often represents personal growth and important life changes, which he is turning 13. That's a big deal. You're becoming a man, a new you. So I think at this point she's thinking it's probably going to be okay. And then suddenly she gets a tarot card divination. So yes, we get another cool tarot card reference. She says the Tower reversed. So this is the Tower card that Marvel released, particularly for Agatha All Along, and this is what it looks like in the official Waite Rider tarot card set. Now notice they did make a couple key changes. The crown on the left has been changed from yellow to blue for the series. That would be for Wiccan. And then the two figures falling out of the tower have changed a little bit. In fact, you might argue the one on the left looks like Wiccan because of the headband, and the one on the right looks like Speed because of his long hair. Now, the W is actually a lightning bolt, but boy, doesn't that work perfect for Wanda. That's crazy. So they didn't even alter that. On the original card, it was a W, but I love that. But she said reversed. So when you read tarot cards, you need to look at them to see whether they're right side up or reversed. A reversed tower suggests that you're undergoing a significant personal transformation and upheaval. So a personal change, a huge change. Well, that's obviously going to happen to Billy Kaplan before long. And then this is really cool too. The reason she called out the tarot card reference is she saw in the crystal ball Billy Maximoff, so, 3 years from now, in his outfit that he'll wear on the Witch's Road, actually, and that's what made her have the vision. So every time she sees something where the character in the show lives out their tarot card, that's when she calls it out. Remember a couple other examples. The Three of Pentacles she called out when she figured out who the Coven is, and that's because she looked at the little symbol on the eviction notice and noticed that matches the symbol on the card. She called out the High Priestess for Jennifer because, look at that. It's exactly off the card, right? She looks like the High Priestess. She called out Three of Swords for Agatha because Agatha was in the exact pose of the card, holding out her hands. And then most recently, she said Knight of Wands in reference to Alice, and Alice was holding the broom, very similar to how she holds it in the card. Isn't that crazy? And of course, that's when she whacks the Salem 7 off of Billy slash teen. So yeah, I love these. So just for reference, there's 3 more left to go. Queen of Cups, which I am 100% sure will get called out in the next episode because I'm guessing that is the air trial. The Death card, and then the Magician is one that was in the closing credits. They have that in an image. I'm wondering if he's going to come up or not. He was not one of the promo cards. But go check out a video I have on the tarot cards if you want to know more. They are so cool. All right, so I love this little call out for Dario Argento when he says, love the vibe in here. It's very early Argento. So Dario Argento directed Suspiria, which was one of his masterpieces, and that was referenced in the 4th episode. And I got to call out Deep Red because, man, Deep Red is so, so good. All right, so then I got a question for you. Leave in the comments what you think. Should Lilia at this point have said more to Billy Kaplan? You know, telling him basically what she saw, because she doesn't really tell him much. In fact, she just says, enjoy the now, baby. It's the only thing that's certain, which is true, but he only has about an hour, maybe 2 hours before he's going to die. So I'm wondering, is it either a case of she didn't really have an exact specific, I know you're going to die in 2 hours, but just knew that within 2 hours he was going to have a big time transformation, an upheaval? Or did she specifically know, and should she have warned him? What are the ethics, I guess, behind this? I would love your thoughts on that. All right, so it turns out Lilia is the one that creates the sigil. But oh my goodness, I cannot believe I didn't guess this. Because what I did figure out, notice, is that the signature on all the tarot cards is basically the sigil. Because if you flip it around, that's the sigil that is on his mouth. So I had guessed that whoever created the sigil had something to do with the cards. Well, why did I not guess Lilia herself, right? I mean, there was no reason to. This was a total surprise, and I love it. But yeah, they told us from the beginning. It had to be Lilia, because Lilia is the one that reads the tarot cards. I love this series so much. All right, so then she slips it into Billy's coat pocket and then immediately forgets that she even did it. That's so cool, because remember, even the one that cast the sigil forgets that they did it. So then she hands the coat off to somebody else, saying, some kid left this in my tent. They ask which kid, and she says, I don't remember. Wild. All right, so here's another question for you. Was Lilia therefore to blame for Multiverse of Madness? Because had Lilia not put that sigil on Billy Kaplan, then Wanda would have been able to find that he was still alive. Remember, she used the Darkhold to search for Billy and Tommy. And Billy was here the whole time, of course, in a different body, but was here the whole time. But she couldn't detect him. Isn't that crazy? And it's even wilder to think that Agatha called it a clumsy glamour, you know, like it was a crappy sigil, if you will. I don't know whether that matters, because honestly, a sigil is a sigil. So whether it was done quickly or not and doesn't look beautiful, still means it's powerful. So is Lilia responsible for Multiverse of Madness? Or did the Darkhold pretty much make sure that Wanda was not going to find her kids? Because I think the Darkhold wanted Wanda to go to the other across the multiverse. So let me know your thoughts on that. Interesting question. All right, so we do learn that the Hex at this exact moment is going down because they're informed that something is happening with the anomaly in Westview. Everybody's phone sends an emergency alert. That's kind of wild. Everybody needs to go home as quickly and safely as possible. So what I think is really interesting is this tells us by this point in WandaVision, so we're talking episode 9, everybody knew about the anomaly, the Hex, and Westview. So why do I say that? Well, remember at the beginning of WandaVision, it was actually episode 4, but it was a flashback episode, we learned that even the police standing in front of a Westview sign were saying there's no such place, right? They're saying Westview doesn't exist. It's right there, dude. The sign's right there. So at the beginning, Wanda made it so that people did not want to go to Westview. They didn't even know it existed. They drove around it. But obviously by the end of WandaVision, the cat was out of the bag and everybody knew about it. So, okay, this is interesting. Is it possible that because the radio picked up the frequency of Wanda's sitcom, did that help draw Billy Maximoff to the car? In particular, we hear Vision saying, my wife and her flying saucers, and Wanda saying, my husband and his indestructible head. And those were from the early episodes of the series. And of course, the canned audience laughing. So this doesn't mean that those episodes are happening at this time, but it does mean that similar to the TVs, remember how they were able to pick up the frequency and watch those episodes? The radio, the AM radio in particular, was picking up the WandaVision show. So maybe that helped draw Billy Maximoff to the car. So they look outside the window and they're very distracted by the hex, understandably. His father, Jeff, is saying, is it going away? And Rebecca, the wife, is saying, well, it looks like it's getting smaller. So we're talking this is the very end of episode 9 when the hex is slowly going away. Well, Billy then shouts out, Mom, look out, because they've managed to swerve onto the wrong side of the road. But I do want to point out they are now in the city of Eastview, and that's important for later. But okay, so we see that Billy is most definitely in the back seat, not good, because the back seat is what gets munched when they hit this tree. And then, yeah, as the car is just sitting there, slowly the hex is going down. All right, so around that same time, we have Wanda saying goodnight to the boys, and the boys saying goodnight, Mom. And then at that exact moment, the two boys are saying goodnight to each other. So really, if you think about it, the last thing Billy remembers is saying goodnight to Tommy, and Tommy saying goodnight to him. And then at that moment, boom, wakes back up and shouts Tommy. So that's the biggest reason he so much wants to find Tommy, is that was just the last thing on his mind. But of course, we'll also learn that he thinks Wanda and Vision are gone. They're dead. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, so this line now makes sense from episode 1, when Agatha says there was a car wreck about an hour before time of death, although I'm not real sure what she means by hour before time of death. I still got to think about that. Let me know if you have any thoughts on that. But there was a car wreck. Rio asked her where, and she says Eastview. And there was a blood stain in the back seat and 2 front airbags deployed. So definitely that's describing that accident. But then she says, my gut tells me they're related, but I can't shake this feeling that I'm seeing it wrong. So they are related. I mean, that is how Billy Maximoff left the hex and came into Billy Kaplan's, deceased body. All right, so another interesting question. Whose body exactly is this? I mean, we've all presumed it was Wanda, right? Because it looks female, at least. It seems female. It's got a hood. She's got a hood on. That was very similar to Wanda. But isn't it interesting? At the end of episode 6, we see Billy pulling a hood over his head, and notice he is indeed barefoot. In fact, he looks kind of similar to this corpse, what the corpse is wearing. Is it possible that this isn't meant to be Wanda, but is meant to be Billy? In fact, remember this line when she's talking to Dottie, and when Dottie says something about it being a female corpse, and she's like, now how do you know it's female? Why do you assume that? Well, honestly, it's almost like Agatha's talking to us, right? Why are we assuming that? Good question. Good question. Maybe it isn't a woman. Because W. Maximoff could be Wanda Maximoff, but could also be William Maximoff. But this is really interesting. So there's this odd line where she says, get samples from both. Now, right before she says that, the camera, and presumably her eyes, are looking first at the feet of the corpse and then at the hands. So when she says get samples from both, I just assumed, oh, she's talking about from toenails and fingernails. But she doesn't say that. So a very interesting theory that SWLX3LU has is that, number one, the body is Billy Kaplan, which is what I've been throwing out as an interesting theory. But SW points out that there's one quote-unquote body, but she says get samples from both, implying that maybe the body is representing both Billy and Tommy. Wild stuff. I mean, honestly, every single line in this series you could pick apart because there's so much going on. So tell me if you think this is going down a rabbit hole or if you think there's something we should be paying attention to here. Certainly interesting nonetheless. Okay, so a big question people have had is, how did Hex Billy Maximoff, have a soul if he was just a Hex creation? Well, I don't know whether they're going to tie this together or not, but my headcanon is these lines right here. When Agatha says, you're supposed to be a myth, a being capable of spontaneous creation. And here you are using it to make breakfast for dinner. Oh yes, your children and this whole little life you've made, this is chaos magic, Wanda. So I think she literally has the ability to create something from nothing. So in other words, she created their souls. And when the hex went down, their souls still existed. Although, you do have to wonder about this line from WandaVision when she looks at the kids and says, thank you for choosing me to be your mom. That's right before they vanish. So does that imply the souls pre-existed and chose to be her mom? Or is that just one of the nice things you say to your kids, as you're saying goodbye to them for the last time? I don't know. This line could have different meaning. Maybe those souls actually existed beforehand. Man, so much to consider. Let me know your thoughts on that. Okay. Also, does this tell us something more? There's this, during the closing credits, when they show Joe Locke's name, they have like a newspaper heading that says near death in Westview. Now, that's the key point. In Westview, not Eastview. in Westview. And then if you pause it really slowly and advance one frame at a time, really briefly, you can see that it's a newspaper article written by Nia Herman. Don't know who that is, but December 14th, 2023. I'm still trying to decide if that date means anything. But again, it's about deaths in Westview, so that can't be talking about Billy Kaplan, because he died in Eastview. Remember, he said, so on the night of the accident, we were only a few miles from Westview, but they weren't in Westview. So maybe that date doesn't mean anything, but I will come back to it in just a minute, so kind of hold that thought. All right, so this is kind of cool. Who shows up at the scene? That would be Alice, who's working for the Eastview police. Now, that's a little confusing since we saw her as a security guard in the second episode, but actually there's a key line when her boss says, your old lieutenant convinced me to give you a shot. So obviously she lost her job with the police, but her lieutenant was really nice and recommended her as a security guard. So that's cool. That all ties together. Then imagine this. Imagine waking up right after getting tucked in bed by your mom, and you have a totally different body. Joe Locke did such a good job in this performance. So he's breathing heavily. He's just so panicked seeing his face for the first time. And then he starts reading minds. He reads his mom's mind. She's upset with his dad, and she reads his dad's mind, and he's being snarky back to her. But they're both just thinking it. They didn't say anything. And he says, it's fine. Please don't fight. Of course, they're not fighting. They're just thinking thoughts. But that's when we learn, yes, he does indeed have telepathy. Although there were hints of it in WandaVision, because here's young Billy telling Agatha, you're quiet, Agnes, on the inside. So he was even reading her mind. He didn't like the chaotic mind of his mom, because this is when Wanda was losing it. So yeah, clearly he's always had telepathy, and it is indeed one of his abilities going forward. So I love that. And then how perfect, right? What a perfect excuse for him being a little, messed up, trying to figure things out. Well, everybody else thinks he has amnesia. So that works perfect to give him time to adjust to his new life. Although this dog was an immediate reminder of why I'm a cat person. So the dog is not happy he's there, right? Because dogs can sense when something's wrong. I get that. But still, yikes, look at those teeth. No, I'm a cat person 24/7. Give me cats over dogs any day of the week. All right, so then lots going on in Billy Kaplan's old room. We could talk forever about Easter eggs, but a couple key ones that I really liked. He's got Houdini on the wall, one of the greatest magicians ever, of course. Then he has Alice in Wonderland on the wall, Wizard of Oz on the wall, and Black Cauldron. So I've never seen this movie, but I hear for a Disney movie, it's pretty scary, at least for young kids especially. But yeah, it is indeed on Disney Plus. So a little bit of cross promotion by Disney, gotta love it. Then here we see another poster on the right for Houdini, and on the left, a movie called Goofballs, which clearly is an homage to the Goonies. You can tell by the poster style, but also if you remember earlier when they went down the slide in episode 3, that was so much like the Goonies where they went down the slide as well. So yeah, clearly the writers like the Goonies. Who doesn't like the Goonies, right? All right, so here he is trying to assume his new identity, saying to himself, I'm William Kaplan. I'm William Kaplan. So yeah, poor Billy Maximoff, man. Just imagine what he's going through right now. All right, so then we do a little timeline management. We jump 3 years later, which is perfect because remember, Billy had said, a lot happened to me at age 13. Of course, that's when Billy Maximoff came into his body. And we now learn in present day, he's 16. So 3 years later. And in fact, this is the timeline at a very high level. You have WandaVision, that's November 2023. We have maybe this December 14th, 2023 date. I still haven't decided if it's relevant. Then it's a whole year later that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness happens in 2024. And then I believe Agatha All Along to be in October 2026. I'll do a final timeline analysis when the series ends, but that's when I think it's happening. So yeah, very, very interesting to see how this all fits together. And then we get to meet Eddie, or should I say Teddy. Okay, so in the comics, Billy Kaplan, Wiccan, is in a relationship with Teddy Altman, a.k.a. Hulkling. Now, his name makes you think Incredible Hulk, but actually there's no tie whatsoever between Hulkling and the Incredible Hulk. I know, very confusing. Instead, Hulkling is a Kree-Skrull hybrid, between a marriage between Kree and Skrull, and therefore has those associated powers. So everybody's wondering then, is Eddie going to become Hulkling? Because that relationship is so key. Wiccan and Hulkling's relationship in the Young Avengers is a big deal. So is Eddie going to become Hulkling, or does their relationship break off and instead Scar becomes Hulkling? I hope not. Please not. Please, no. Again, there's no tie between Hulkling in the comics and the Incredible Hulk, but you got to wonder why they introduced this dude. Hairline aside, what was his purpose? So anyway, let me know your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen with Eddie and Billy's relationship, and do you think Hulkling is somewhere down the line in the future? Okay, so lots more Easter eggs now that Billy Maximoff has taken over Billy Kaplan's room. On the left, you can see a poster for the Craft, another one for the Saw, and then on the right, you can see a Trans Live sign, which is awesome. Then a couple more here that I really enjoyed. Jennifer's Body, awesome horror movie, and Carrie, of course, big-time classic horror movie. So there are so many Easter eggs. We could talk for days, but I really love the ones that reference the movies. Okay, so now they talk about how the public has viewed the hex. I think that's really cool. So they're looking at this article about the red dome anomaly and its impact. The article was written on February 15th of 2026. So 2.5 years later, they're still writing articles about it. So this is important. Billy says at the exact moment that we crashed, that's when the anomaly was collapsing, right? So that explains definitely how Billy Maximoff went into Billy Kaplan. And then, I love this, Eddie says, I thought that turned out to be some Avengers training exercise gone wrong. So now we learn what the official story given to the public was. It was an Avengers training exercise gone wrong. That's hilarious. And we're going to see even more of these type of fake stories that were given to the public in a moment. But okay, so we get another Coven member cameo because Billy has been watching some of Jennifer Kale's videos. So that's cool. But he's also been watching videos about the hex, and in particular the runes that we saw when Scarlet Witch was tricking Agatha and ultimately defeated her. But I love this. He says, I did find a guy on Reddit. He used to live there, and I'm supposed to meet him tomorrow. So who is the guy? Oh my goodness, epic cameo of the episode. Yes, he says, are you Craft Crazy 17 to Billy? And Billy asks back, well, you must be Bonerific 69. I have no idea how Joe Locke said that without cracking up. That is so funny. But anyway, yes, indeed, it is Ralph Boner, or Randall, as he says. Call me Randall. Yeah, we know it's you, Ralph. We know it's you. All right, so we need to talk for a minute about a deleted scene and Ralph Boner, because that might explain some things. So there's a deleted scene for WandaVision that shows that Jimmy Woo's missing witness was indeed Ralph Boner. Because here he's saying it should be easy to find him now that everything is calmed down. But instead, we see that Ralph Boner has been cutting off his GPS device and is ready to book out of there and hightail it and be gone. So I don't know whether to believe a deleted scene is canon or not. I guess it's up to each person to decide. But this does explain some of the mysteries of WandaVision that we never got answered. Who was Jimmy Woo looking for, and where the heck did Ralph Boner go? So seemingly, if this is canon, he's been hiding out ever since. All right, so this is interesting also. In previous breakdowns, I've mentioned that the hex in the closing credits had no name there. And I was waiting to see whose name would appear. Well, it's Evan Peters, which makes sense because he was involved during the hex. But I'm still hoping that maybe in future episodes, a different name might show up here. That we may get a special cameo. Fingers crossed. We'll see. Don't want to get my hopes up, but I'm hoping somebody else might appear here in the future. All right, so Ralph shares his story, explaining that Wanda had the whole town acting out this weird, sad sitcom plot. And then I love it. He's thinking, please don't ask about Agatha. Please don't ask about Agatha. So, of course, Billy, reading his mind, asks about Agatha. So he explains, she stole my house, completely ruined the market value, which makes sense. That's why he's not living in his house now, because that was his house, literally. Agatha took over his house. He says, I held a really nice lady hostage in my attic, referring, of course, to Monica Rambeau. He says, I was a terrible influence on Wanda and Vision's kids. Yes, you were. And he admitted that he's the one that killed Sparky. He says, I poisoned a dog. So now he did it under the control of Agatha. So Agatha really did kill Sparky. But she made poor Ralph do the dirty deed. Yikes. Then he's asked about those kids who he was such a bad influence on. And he says, Billy and Tommy. And notice Billy immediately goes, Tommy, when he hears that name. Well, what happened to him? So he explains, who knows? I mean, Wanda's dead, and word on the street is that Sword used Vision for parts. So there's more examples of the government's answer to what happened to Wanda, she's dead, and what happened to Vision. No white Vision, no explanation for that. They don't even talk about that. They just say that the real Vision was used for parts. Very interesting. So then he's asked about Agatha and says, last I heard, she was under some kind of spell, acting like a normal resident, sourdough starters, potlucks, and whatnot. So that's interesting. That means for the last 3 years, Agatha's been that nosy neighbor, right? And that's what I think is so important about Herb saying this in the first episode. He says, you haven't been yourself the past few days, almost like you got bit by a true crime bug. So basically, she's been the nosy neighbor for the last basically 3 years, and it's only recently she started doing the detective thing. So I still think Rio cast some type of spell on her to make her change from the nosy neighbor into Detective Agatha, but we'll have to wait and see as we learn more on that. All right, so now Billy is planning his next move. He believes firmly that Wanda's dead, right? And the vision is dismantled, which is why I think he's not searching for either of them. There's no reason, right? But he believes Tommy is missing, so he's going to search after Tommy. Also, he's researching about sigils, because he's found this one in his pocket, obviously. And we can see on the board here, he's looking at something called destructible sigils, realizing that he could actually destroy this at any time that he wanted, it seems. And then I love how he's doing like us, right? We were trying to figure out, what is this sigil? Is it a ZMW62? What is it? Love that. So then he starts researching about Agatha, where else but on Reddit, learns that she was a survivor of the Titanic, also that she was nearby when the Zeppelin, the Hindenburg, exploded, because you can see her standing there watching. It does make you wonder, if she was in a relationship with Rio, and if Rio really is death, did Agatha help cause these things? Did she help make them happen to give death more souls to take? That'd be crazy. That would be crazy. And then this is so funny. It turns out that she is even the real-life Jolene from Dolly Parton's 1972 hit. Go check it out. It's a great song, but that is a funny, funny joke. Okay, so I love this. Fun facts. Mind you, these are the fun facts about Agatha. She murdered her entire coven, possesses succubus powers, and her nickname is Witch Killer. And those are the fun facts. But also, she is the only known survivor of the Witch's Road. Plus, I love under folklore references, you can barely read it, but it said certain children's books make reference to Agatha. What children's book references Agatha? I want to know. But anyway, he focuses in on the Witch's Road, and right then, the record that he's been listening to plays even louder, and it's right on the Down the Witch's Road part of the song. Because, of course, he's listening to Lorna Woo's version of the Ballad of the Witch's Road. So he realizes, that's what I need. I need to go on the road to find Tommy. All right, so he's now heading off to Westview, and this is such an important text message he gets. Notice it's from his boyfriend, from Eddie, but at the end, Eddie says, "You're my," and sends a heart emoji, but it's a black heart. Okay, did they finally answer one of our biggest questions, which was, why did Lilia write a black heart when she wrote out the members of the coven? I mean, we couldn't see it, but she did say, I drew basically a black heart. Well, the reason I'm thinking now is because she couldn't write Billy Maximoff's name, or Billy Kaplan for that matter, because of the sigil. So she had to just draw a black heart, and maybe that's because of the nickname that he has from his boyfriend. Because cleverly, they made us think it was Rio, because Rio, when told you don't have a heart, says, no, I do, it's black, and it beats for you. So naturally, we're thinking, oh, black heart, Rio. Rio's the last member of the coven. No, it turns out that it's Billy. That's craziness. So is that perhaps how they were able to open this entrance without an Earth Witch? Did it turn out they did have an Earth Witch? It was Billy. Is Billy the last member of the coven? Because remember, when he books down the stairs, that's when the door started to open and appear. So, okay, that means he is their Earth Witch. Rio isn't the Earth Witch, or is she? I don't think so. I don't think Rio is anymore. And so, yes, that means I can officially get rid of my Mrs. Hart is the same as Sharon Davis theory. Go check out my earlier videos if you want more on that. But I just assumed that because they didn't have an Earth Witch unless Rio was with them. How did they open this door? They opened it because Billy is the last member of the coven. So has Billy been playing them all along? Because remember, Billy's the one that found the note in the first trial, played the record in the second trial, and came up with the idea to Ouija in the third trial. So now we see him practicing his release spell to free Agatha, and notice that it requires an important personal item. So now we know why he was breaking into her house. But before Billy breaks into the house, we see something interesting. We see Agatha talking to, well, somebody. And of course, in the first episode, we know that she at least thinks she's talking to Rio. So lots of questions here. Is Rio really even there? Or is Rio just in her mind? I had also thought Rio and maybe Billy were working together, but it doesn't look like it now because we have not seen that Billy met Rio before this. So, man, very, very interesting. I would love your thoughts on what you think is going on with Rio. But okay, so now we know why he broke in, because he needed to get a personal item so that he could free Agatha from the spell. So then I want to go through a couple of these interesting side-by-side shots. So I posted a video that somebody else had created. It's an awesome video, and you can watch the whole thing if you want. But it shows what was really happening on the right versus what we thought was happening on the left. And notice Billy's much nicer in real life. He's like, I'm trying to help you, he's shouting out to her. Then this is funny, as he's running away, the reason she doesn't catch him is she has a cramp. She's like, ouch, cramp. And then this is interesting. So Billy doesn't go flying over the car. Instead, he just hits the door. So that's interesting. And I love that Mrs. Hart, instead of saying, he came out of nowhere, instead is like, hooligan. That's funny. Mrs. Hart's actually meaner in the real world. So then this is fascinating. Agatha catches Billy and brings him back to the house. But notice Rio, at least she thought, was with her during all of this. Where is Rio? I am really dying to know. We need one more flashback. I love this. So instead of questioning Teen, in the police station, instead they're just sitting in her living room. That's hilarious. And when she kicks him, she thinks it's much more violent than it really is. I mean, it still hurts him, I'm sure, but it was nothing like him flying out of the chair. Then here he is again, being very kind. I want to work with you, Detective Agatha. And then now when he's casting his spell to break her out of it, notice he was much creepier in episode 1 than he was in episode 6. I absolutely love her boner family reunion shirt. I mean, this is Ralph's house that she took over. So she just grabbed one of his random shirts. And then I'm just going to move past the pitch a tent joke, but that is really funny. All right, so then this is cool. Her gun and holster is duct tape and a garden hose head. Love it. All right, so I don't know how Joe Locke kept a straight face during this when she is just in his face going, you do not want to poke that bear. He's like, you're right. I don't want to poke it. I don't want to poke it. I mean, you can see his lips. He's just about to crack up. That is such a funny scene. Then, good joke here too. He's like, come on, I don't want to go back in the closet. Love it. And then finally, we see that he indeed said both names. When he was asked the first time, he said William Kaplan, and the second time he said Billy Maximoff, and the sigil covered both. So he was not able to identify himself at all. So finally, we go back to present day as Agatha is pulling herself out by a vine, and then we see Billy now finally destroying the sigil in his hands. So now for certain it won't appear anymore. And I love that Agatha is implying that she has known for quite some time. She's going back through some of the things he said, like a sigil. What's that? He was playing dumb about a sigil when clearly he knows what it is. And power is what I'm missing when he's actually incredibly powerful. So then she's saying, I had a feeling when we first met. That's interesting. I don't know if she's telling the truth, because I think for the longest time she thought he was Nicholas Scratch. But she does say this, even with the sigil in the way, you and your mother have the same tell. That is interesting. So what is that tell? I mean, I could see if it's maybe the same way that they move their fingers when they cast their magic, but he wasn't casting any magic. Not until now. So what is that tell? And then she says I wasn't sure until, everything went crazy and he buried Lilia and Jen. But that does make us reflect back on this interesting line. This was right after Mrs. Hart died, the next episode, and she looks down at Mrs. Hart's body and said, I didn't think you had it in you. And Teen looks up and said, you didn't think who had what in them? And she just winks at him. Was that wink basically saying, look, I know you're behind all this, and I'm impressed you were willing to let Mrs. Hart die? I mean, that is being committed to the cause. So I'm wondering, is that what this wink is about? Because that is interesting. This might be the point when she had a really strong feeling about it. But anyway, then speaking of Lily and Jen, as far as they know, they are dead, right? But life goes on, says Agatha. So that's interesting. I mean, they are both assuming that the rest of the trials is going to be just the two of them. How do they think they're going to do the air trial, I wonder? Anyway, she says, I mean, I've killed, my share. Which, remember, the Hindenburg, the Titanic, she might be referring back to those. All right, so she says, don't you dare feel guilty about your talent. You saw an opportunity, an empty vessel, referring to Billy Kaplan, and you moved in. So you broke a few rules. Big deal. So what rule is she referring to? That's from Multiverse of Madness, when the undead were saying to Doctor Strange, hey, Stephen Strange, possessing a dead body is forbidden. Of course, that's my favorite part of the movie, so I'm glad he did it. But yes, when Stephen Strange took over the corpse, that is, quote unquote, breaking the rules. So is that going to end up getting Billy Maximoff in trouble? Is that going to be a problem down the line? All right, so he tries to use his magic powers and the energy warbles. So something's going on. He seems to have lost them. So that is interesting. But he says, well, you know it's there, almost as a threat to Agatha. So then she asks, what does Billy Maximoff want at the end of the road? Of course, we know it's Tommy, but she doesn't know that yet. So she says, is it to find Mama? I mean, she chose a full town of strangers over her own flesh and wires. What about Robopapa? That's got to be Vision's new name, by the way, Robopapa. Love it. Lord knows where he is or in how many pieces. So again, everyone believes the Vision's been dismantled and Wanda is dead. Then she says, oh, you're after Toby. That's funny. But then he says, hey, he's out there. Well, first of all, he says it's Tommy. But then he says, he's out there somewhere. I can sense him. I just can't find him. Okay, so this is interesting. So we know that the sigil kept Billy from being found by Wanda, right? So what has kept Tommy from being found by Wanda? I mean, the fact that Billy is saying, I can sense him out there, that really does make me think that Wanda was completely taken over by the Darkhold, that she had no chance of finding either Billy or Tommy because the Darkhold took over her. Anyway, he says, if you really want to finish this together, just know that I do not trust you. That's great. I love that he has kind of taken over this relationship. And then this is interesting. So if we think back to something Lilia said to Billy Kaplan, you don't need to be psychic to see you're a good egg. However, Billy Maximoff, when given a chance to respond in the same fashion, when Agatha says, let's go to the next trial, last one there is a nice person, Billy Maximoff says, I'm not that nice. So, what is he trying to tell us here? I mean, I don't think he's evil, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's as nice and kind as Billy Kaplan. Billy Maximoff is like, I'm ticked right now, and you better not get in my way. I love it. He is going to be incredible. Wiccan is going to be a huge addition to the MCU. So happy to have him here finally. So things are really heating up. Basically 2 more weeks because we get, episode 8 and 9 together. So tell me your favorite parts of the episode. What did you love about this episode? And what are you looking forward to in the episodes to come? Also, don't forget, October contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook, and there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to bring up the Discord. Here we are talking about our favorite moments from the episode, including Agatha referring to Vision as Robopapa. So we have 1,800 members on the Discord, conversations 24/7, and I will leave a pinned comment so that you can join, because we would love to have you be part of the fun. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.